Hello friends, welcome back to my YouTube channel. We have already completed chapter 1, that is GST introduction. We have studied that chapter in detail, and after that we completed question answers, also exercises and illustration from ICI study material. In this video we'll do chapter 2, that is supply under GST. So first we'll do this chapter in detail. Okay, first we'll study in detail, after that we'll do the summary portion, and after that the question answers, means illustrations and exercises from ICI study material. Okay, entire thing we are doing from the ICI material, and the PDF link you will get from the description. Okay, if you wish you can download. So let's start off with chapter 2, that is supply under GST. Introduction. A taxable event is any transaction or occurrence that results in a tax consequence. So first you need to understand the term taxable event. A taxable event means the event which is taxable, means any transaction that results in a tax consequence. The transaction that takes place, a transaction that results in a tax consequence. Suppose a transaction that has taken place between the parties, and the result is that, what is the consequence? Consequence is that transaction results in a tax consequence, means that transaction is taxable. That is only taxable event, means an event which is taxable. So before levying any taxable event needs to be ascertained. It is the foundation stone of any taxation system. It determines the point at which tax would be levied. So before levying any tax, it is necessary to determine the taxable event. Why it is necessary? It is necessary because it determines the point at which tax would be levied. Suppose any transaction is taken place between the parties, so you need to understand the point, means at what time, at what place that event will be taxable, at what place basically. Okay, what place, at what, then what is that, whether it CGST or CGST, SGST or IGST will be imposed. So then what rate will be there. So it is necessary to determine the point at which tax would be levied. Okay. Under the earlier indirect tax regime, the framework of taxable event in various statutes was prone to the catena of interpretations, resulting in litigation since decades. The controversy is largely related to issues like whether a particular process amounted to manufacture or not, whether the sale was predetermined sale, whether a particular transaction was sale of goods or rendering of services. This what was the difficulty in earlier tax regime? In earlier tax regime, the framework of taxable event was prone to the catena of interpretations, means that was prone to the chain of interpretations, means there was there was a series of interpretation, like whether this amounts to manufacture or not. If it is manufactured, then the tax consequence will be like this. Then if it is a sale, then tax consequence will be this. So there was series of interpretation, there was chain of interpretations in earlier tax regime. Now how GST resolves this issue? The GST law resolves this issue by laying down one comprehensive taxable event, that is supply. Now there is only one taxable event, that is supply. Multiple taxable events is not there in present tax regime. It was in earlier tax regime, like whether it is manufacture or not, to whether it is sale or not. So too many taxable event is not there in GST. So in GST there is one comprehensive taxable event, that is supply. So supply of goods or services or both, that is a taxable event. Various taxable events, namely manufacture, sale, rendering of service, purchase, entry into a territory of state, etc., have been done away with in favor of just one event, that is supply. So all this is just vanished. Now there is just one taxable event, that is supply. Now GST law, by levying tax on supply of goods and or services, departs from the historically understood concepts of the taxable event under the state VAT laws, excise laws and service tax laws, that is sale, manufacture and service respectively. So under state laws, sale, taxable event was sale. Under excise laws it was manufacture. Under service tax law it was service. So GST has departed from all the historically understood concepts of taxable event, means there is just one taxable event, they are saying. In the GST regime, the entire value of supply of goods and or services is taxed in an integrated manner, unlike the earlier indirect tax, which was charged independently either on the manufacture or sale of goods, or on the provision of services. Now it is taxed in an integrated manner. There is no independent, like if it is a manufacture, then this tax, then sale, then this tax. So that lead to That was what was the consequence of this tax charging of tax at the time of manufacture, at the time of sale, that led to cascading effect. So these all problem is not there in GST regime. So these just tax will be charged on the entire value of supply of goods and or services in GST regime. So it is not charged independently. Taxation is charged, means tax is charged in an integrated manner in GST. So this is what they have given in introduction basically. So they have just given that there is one taxable event, that is supply, unlike the earlier tax regime. This is what they have given in just in the introduction. Now relevant definition: goods. Goods means every kind of movable property other than money and securities. Okay. Goods means every kind of movable property other than money and securities, but includes actionable claim, growing crops, grass, and things attached to or forming part of the land which are agreed to be severed before supply or under a contract of supply. Now every kind of movable property, that is goods. Now two items excluded: one is money is excluded from the definition of goods, and securities, money and securities. Okay. Now actionable claim is included in goods. Actionable claim means any claim against which lawsuit can be filed, that is actionable claim. Then growing crops and grass and things attached to or forming part of the land, that are included in the definition of goods only when they are agreed to be severed. Severed means when they are agreed to be cut off before supply or under a contract of supply. If so condition is there, means if they are agreed to be cut off before supply or under a contract of supply, then only that is included in the definition of goods. Now competent authority. Competent authority means such authority as may be notified by the government under section 2 subsection 29 of CGST Act. Next, family means the spouse and children of the person. Spouse and children is included in are included in family, and with spouse and children, parents, grandparents, brothers and sisters of the person. Brothers and sisters are included in the definition of family only if they are wholly or mainly dependent on the said person. Section 2 subsection 49 of the CGST Act. Okay. So this is the definition of family. Now government. Government means central government as defined in section 2 subsection 53 of CGST Act. Local authority. Local authority means a panchayat as defined in clause D of article 243 of the Constitution. A municipality as defined in clause E of article 243p of the Constitution. Now local authority means panchayat, municipality, then municipal committee. Municipal committee, Zilla Parishad, a district board, and any authority legally entitled to or entrusted by the central government or by any state government with the control or management of a municipal or local fund. So this municipal committee, Zilla Parishad, is all included in local authority. Next is Cantonment Board as defined in section 3 of Cantonments Act 2006, that is included. A regional council or district council constituted under 6th schedule to the Constitution, that is included. Then a development board is included, that is constituted under article 371 and article 371J of the Constitution. Then a regional council is included, which is constituted under article 371A of the Constitution. Okay. So regional council, development board, regional council or district council constituted under 6th schedule. This is regional council constituted under 371A of the Constitution, and this E number is regional council or district council constituted under the 6th schedule to the Constitution. The development board is included, cantonment board is included, municipal committee, Zilla Parishad, these all are included, which are entrusted by the and any other authority entrusted by the central government or any state government. Then municipality is included, panchayat is included. Means local authority means this. They have not given include, they have given means. So local authority done. Now business includes this thing. When it's given includes, means this is not the exhaustive definition. That is the difference between when it's given means and includes. Means it means this is the exhaustive definition. Now when it's given business includes this thing, means business includes this thing, and apart from this thing all means many other things are also there that are included in business. So means definition of business which they have given, that is not the exhaustive definition. Okay, this is the inclusive definition. So now read business definition properly, it's very important. Any trade, commerce, manufacture, profession, vocation, adventure, wager or any other similar activity, whether or not it is for pecuniary benefit. So this is included in the definition of business. Now business means trade is there, commerce, manufacture, profession, vocation. Vocation means it's an occupation to which person is specially drawn, for which they are suited, for which they are, you can say, trained or qualified. So that is vocation. Now adventure, wager we know, wager means gamble, bet, that is wager. Any other similar activity, whether or not it is for pecuniary benefit or not, that is included in the definition of business. Now next one is any activity or transaction in connection with or incidental or ancillary to the above. Means any activity which is incidental, which is related to the activity as stated in A, that is also included in the definition of business. Next is any activity or transaction in the nature of A above, whether or not there is volume, frequency, continuity or regularity of such transaction. The activities which are mentioned in point A, if those activities, whether or not those activities have volume, frequency, continuity, regularity, they will be included in the definition of business. Means if they don't have volume, it don't have frequency, if they don't have continuity, means if suppose a transaction is taking place only once, there is no continuity, there is no regularity in such transaction, then also they are included in the definition of business. Number D, supply or acquisition of goods including capital assets and services in connection with the commencement or closure of business. If any supply of goods or acquisition of goods including capital asset acquisition is done, and services, supply of services made, that is in connection with the commencement of business, that is in connection with the closure of business, then that supply is included in the definition of business. Next is provision by a club, association, society or any such body for a subscription or any other consideration of the facilities or benefits to its members as the case may. Means any services, any supplies made by the club, association, society or any other body to its members, then that is included in the definition of business. Then admission for a consideration of persons to any premises. If any admission of person is made to any premises, and that is admission is made for a consideration, then that is also included in definition of business. This will understand properly with the help of the examples that is given in the next pages. Next is G number is services supplied by a person as the holder of an office which has been accepted by him in the course of furtherance of his trade, profession or vocation. Means a person who is the holder of an office, that any service is supplied by that holder, that person who is the holder, if any service is supplied by that person in the course of business, then that is included in the definition of business. Now activities of a race club, that is included by way of one sec A B, yeah, H number is activities of a race club including by way of totalizator or a license to bookmaker or activities of a licensed bookmaker in such club. So this is the activities of a race club. So activities of race club are included in the definition of business. So totalizator is nothing but it's we can say it's a device that shows the number of and that shows the amount of bets that is staked on a race. So that is totalizator. So activities of a race club, that is included in the definition of business. Next is any activity or transactions undertaken by the central government, a state government or any local authority in which they are engaged as public authorities. So activities or transactions that is undertaken by central, state government, local authority in which they are engaged as public authorities, that are included in the definition of business. So activities done by this government is also included in the definition of business. So altogether, just recap once, business includes trade, commerce, manufacture if they are done, or any other similar activity, whether or not it is for pecuniary benefit, then any activity incidental to the activities mentioned in A, then any activity as mentioned in A, whether or not such activity has volume, frequency, continuity or regularity, then any supply of goods including capital assets and services is done in connection with the commencement closure of business, that is included in the definition of business. Then provision by a club, association to its members, means supplies made by members or facilities is provided or benefits to its members is provided, that is included in the definition of business. Then admission of person for a consideration to any premises, that is included in the definition of business. Then service provided by a person who is the holder of the office in the course of business, that is included in the definition of business. Then activities of the race club including by way of totalizator, that is included. Then any activities done by the government, that is included. Activities done by the government in which they are engaged as public authorities. That is included in the definition of business. Now next definition is consideration. Consideration in relation to supply of goods or services or both includes. Now consideration also, the definition of consideration that they have given is also the inclusive definition, that is not the exhaustive definition, because they have mentioned consideration includes. Now consideration includes any payment made or to be made, whether in money or otherwise, in respect of, in response to, or for the inducement of the supply of goods or services or both, whether by the recipient or by any other person, but shall not include any subsidy given by central government or a state government. Now any payment, now suppose any transaction is taking place, so for on behalf of such transaction, if any payment is made by any person, that if suppose that payment is made, means that payment is made by any person, means suppose a transaction is taking place between A and B, and A is a supplier and B is the recipient. So if B pays any consideration, recipient only pays the consideration. So if B pays any money to A, that is consideration. But suppose if Mr. C pays on behalf of B, then that is also included in the definition of consideration. Now whether in money, that consideration can be whether in money or otherwise in respect of, and whether by the recipient or by any other person, but that consideration amount shall not include any subsidy given by the central government or a state government. Means any subsidy, suppose any subsidy is given by the government, central or state government, in relation to that particular supply, then that is not included in the consideration. Okay, that is not included in the definition of consideration. No, that you can't say that's a part of the consideration. Now next one is the monetary value of the act of forbearance in respect of or in response to for the inducement of the supply of goods or services or both, whether by recipient or by any other person, but shall not include any subsidy given by central government or a state government. So the dictionary meaning of forbearance means tolerance. So forbearance, we can say it means to abstain from, means any consideration that is received for doing something or promise to refrain from doing something that is subjected to GST. That's why they have said that this is included in the definition of consideration. Now read this again. The monetary value of any act of forbearance means or value of any act or tolerance in respect of, in response to, or for the inducement of the supply of goods or services or both, whether by the recipient, this monetary value is by the recipient or by any other person or by third person, that is included in consideration, but it shall not include any subsidy given by the central or the state government. Okay. Now however, a deposit given in respect of supply of goods or services or both shall not be considered as payment made for such supply unless the supplier applies such consideration as consideration for the said supply. Means they are talking about security deposit. So if any security deposit is given by the recipient, then the same cannot be considered as a part of consideration unless the supplier applies such deposit as consideration. If the supplier applies such deposit as consideration, means such security deposit as consideration, then only it will be considered in consideration. Okay, unless it will not be considered as payment made for such supply. Now next term is actionable claim. Actionable claim means, remember when we did that definition of goods, what was the definition of goods? Recap once. Goods means every kind of movable property other than money and securities. Money security is excluded from the definition of goods, but what are included? Actionable claim is included, and growing crops and grass which are agreed to be severe, that is included. So actionable claim is included in the definition of goods. Now they have explained what is actionable claim. Now actionable claims means a claim to any debt other than a debt secured by mortgage of immovable property or by hypothecation or pledge of movable property, or to any beneficial interest in movable property not in possession, either actual or constructive, of the claimant, which the civil court recognize as affording grounds for relief, whether such debt or beneficial interest be existent, accruing, conditional, or contingent. Section 2, Subsection 1 of CGST Act, read with Section 3 of the Transfer of Property Act 1882. The simple term is actionable claim means any claim that is against which lawsuit can be filed. So means any claim to any debt And what is excluded from this definition? Any secure means any debt that is secured by mortgage or pledge or hypothecation, that is excluded, that is not covered in actionable claim, which is means secure debts are excluded from this. Not only they have given other than debt secured by mortgage or by hypothecation or pledge of any movable property or to any beneficial interest in movable property is secured by all this thing and not in the possession either actual constructive of the claimant with the civil code whether such debt beneficial interest be existent accruing conditional contingent. Simple thing means you just have to remember this. Any claim to any debt means any debt against which claim can be filed and it excludes the secured debt, that is actionable claim. Now manufacture. Manufacture means processing of raw material or inputs in any manner that results in emergence of a new product having a distinct name, character and use, and the term manufacturer shall be construed accordingly. So manufacture means processing of raw material. When raw material or inputs that are processed and that results in a new product, and that new product have distinct character, distinct name, means different character, different name, different use, then that is called the process that is involved, that is called manufacture. Okay, means a new product is emerged from the raw material and that processing of that raw material is called manufacture, and this is done by the manufacturer. So means processing of raw material or inputs in any manner that results in emergence of a new product having a distinct name, character and use, and the term manufacturer shall be construed accordingly. Means the one who manufactures, one who processes the raw material and produces a new product, that is he is known as manufacturer. So manufacture is done. Now money. Money means Indian legal tender or any foreign currency, check, promissory note, bill of exchange, letter of credit, draft, pay order, traveller check, money order, postal or electronic remittance, or any other instrument recognized by RBI of India when used as a consideration to settle an obligation or exchange with Indian legal tender of another denomination, but shall not include any currency that is held for its numismatic value. Now, money means any Indian legal tender, means it includes promissory note, bill of exchange. These all are included, which are recognized by RBI. Those instruments which are recognized by RBI that are included in this money, and which is used as a consideration, means to settle any obligation, consideration is required. So these all are means money means these all instruments which are used as a consideration to settle an obligation, and it what is excluded from the definition of money? Any currency that is held for its numismatic value. So in this they are talking about antique coins or currencies. Means numismatic value means it shall not include any currency that is held for its numismatic value, means the value that can be fetched from the sale of those antique coins or currencies. Means it depends upon the value depends on how old the coin or currency is. So those the value, this numismatic value is excluded, means the currency that is held for its numismatic value, that is excluded from the definition of money. Okay, means antique coins, currencies they are talking about. Now value that can be fetched from the sale of antique coins or currencies, that is not included in the definition of money. Now taxable supply. Taxable supply means supply of goods or services or both which is leviable to tax under this act. Okay, which is leviable to tax means on which tax is imposed, on which tax is leviable. Now taxable territory means territory to which provisions of this act apply. Simple. Now services means anything other than goods, money and securities. In the definition of goods, 2 items were excluded: money, securities. In services, 3 items are excluded: money, securities and goods. So services, in the definition of services, goods, money and securities excluded, but includes activities relating to the use of money or its conversion by cash or by any other mode from one form, currency or denomination to another form, currency or denomination for which a separate consideration is charged. Means the activities that is related to the use of money or conversion by cash or by any other mode, means when one currency is converted to another, one form currency or denomination to another form currency or denomination, and for which separate consideration is charged when it or its conversion by cash. So when it is related to use of money or conversion by cash or by any other mode, then that is included in the definition of services. So services definition done. Explanation they have given: for the removal of doubts, it is hereby clarified that expression services includes facilitating or arranging transactions and securities. This you need to remember. The expression services include facilitating or arranging transaction and securities. Section 2, subsection 102 of CGST Act. The facilitating transactions or arranging transactions and securities that are included in the expression services. Now, supplier. In relation to any goods or services or both shall mean the person supplying the said goods or services or both, and shall include an agent acting as such on behalf of such supplier in relation to goods or services or both supplied. Means any person who is supplying the goods, simple definition, that person will known as a supplier, and it also includes an agent who is acting on behalf of the supplier. Okay. Now, supply definition done. Now, person. Person includes section 2, subsection 84 of CGST Act. Person includes an individual, a HUF, a company, a firm, a LLP, an AOP, association of persons, or a body of individuals, whether incorporated or not, in India or outside India. Then, any corporation is included in definition of persons. Again, they have given inclusive definition. Okay, person definition is inclusive one. So again, incorporation is included any incorporation established by or under any central, state or provincial act or government company as defined in section 2 subsection 45 of Companies Act 2013. So corporation is included, then body corporate is included, any body corporate incorporated by or under the laws of a country outside India. Then a cooperative society that is registered under any law relating to cooperative societies, that is included. Then local authority, central government or state government, society as defined under Societies Registration Act 1860. Trust, every artificial judicial person not falling above. So these all are covered in person. Let's recap once. Person includes individual, HUF, company, firm, LLP, AOP, corporation, body corporate, cooperative society, local authority, CGST, society as defined in Societies Registration Act, trust, every artificial judicial person. So definition of person is done. Now recipient. Recipient means the person who receives the service, who pays the consideration. Now see what they have written. Recipient of supply of goods and or services means where a consideration is payable for the supply of goods or services or both, the person who is liable to pay that consideration. Suppose Mr. A has supplied service to Mr. B. Now, if suppose Mr. B is liable to pay the consideration, means his consideration is payable for the supply that is made by A to B. If the consideration is payable for that supply, so the person who is liable to pay that consideration means Mr. B is liable to pay that consideration, as A was the supplier and B is recipient. So Mr. B was who is the person who is liable to pay that consideration. So Mr. B will be called as recipient. Now again, point number B, what they have given, where no consideration is payable for the supply of goods. Suppose if there no consideration is payable for the supply that is made by A to B, then the person to whom the goods are delivered or made available, or to whom the possession or use of goods is given or made available, if there no consideration is involved, suppose if it's schedule 1 items, if no consideration is involved, then also in schedule 1 what is given, there are certain activities, there are certain examples they are given in schedule 1, in which even if there is no consideration, it will be termed as supply. Okay, so in that scenario we can say that if no consideration is involved, then the person to whom the goods are delivered or goods are made available, or who gets the possession or use of goods, that person is called the recipient. Okay, now where no consideration is payable for the supply of service. Now B point was for the supply of goods, no consideration for supply of goods. Now where no consideration is payable for supply of services, then in that case the person to whom the service is rendered, the person who receives the service, that person is called the recipient. And any reference to a person to whom a supply is made shall be construed as a reference to the recipient of supply. Any reference to a person to whom a supply is made shall be considered as reference to the recipient of supply. Simple thing, they have given any reference to, if any reference is given to a person to whom a supply is made, means if supply is made to any person, any reference is given to any person to whom a supply is made, that will be considered as recipient. And it includes agent acting as such on behalf of the recipient in relation to goods or services or both supplied. Like in the definition of supplier, any agent who represents the supplier, that is included in the definition of supplier. Likewise, in the definition of recipient, any agent who represents the, or we can say who acts on behalf of the recipient, that is included in the definition of recipient. That agent will also be called as recipient. Now, what they have given, our discussion in the study material will principally be confined to the provisions of CGST and IGST laws, as the specific state GST laws are outside the scope of syllabus. Fine. Now, concept of supply, section 7 of CGST Act. Now, concept of supply. The concept of supply is the keystone of the GST architecture. The provisions relating to the meaning and scope of supply are contained in Chapter 3 of CGST Act, read with various schedules given under the said Act. Following sections and schedules shall be discussed in this chapter to understand the concept of supply. Okay, we'll understand these following sections and schedules. Now, section 7, what is given in section 7? Meaning and scope of supply is given. In section 8, taxability of composite and mixed supply is given. That also will do everything. Don't worry. Schedule 1, activities to be treated as supply even if made without consideration, that is included in schedule 1. Now, activities or transactions to be treated as supply of goods or a supply of services, that is given in schedule 2. And in schedule 3, what is given? Activities or transaction which shall be treated in neither as supply of goods nor as supply of services. So these two sections schedules will study. Now, it may be noted that GST laws of all the states and union territories are largely based on the CGST Act 2017. Okay, now start section 7. Now, in section 7, what they said, that meaning and scope of supply will study in section 7. Now, what is given? Supply includes inclusive definition again. Supply includes all forms of supply of goods or services or both, such as sale, transfer, barter, exchange, license, rental, lease, or disposal, made or agreed to be made for a consideration by a person in the course of furtherance of business. Okay. Now, they have given the inclusive definition of supply. They have said that supply includes all forms of supply. Means be it sale, transfer, barter, these all are supply. If any sale transaction is there, if any barter is there, if any barter, you almost know this barter. Goods are exchanged for goods. Barter, then transfer is there. If suppose any exchange is there, license, rental, these all activities are the form of supply only. And if they are made, or if they are made actually, or if they are agreed to be made for a consideration, then also it is supply, and it is by a person, consideration by a person in the course of furtherance of business. So the keywords which you have to pick, that supply includes these all: sale, transfer, barter, exchange, that is made or agreed to be made. Then consideration is by a person, consideration must be there, and it should be in the course of furtherance of business. So key points are sale, transfer, barter, these all. Then made or agreed to be made. Then third keyword is consideration must be there in supply, and then it should be in the course of furtherance of business. Okay, and it should be consideration by a person. Person definition we have already done. So supply includes this. Now, in point number B, they have given importation of services. Supply includes importation of services for a consideration whether or not in the course of furtherance of business. Means when a service is imported, that is supply, and in when the service is imported on for that service, if consideration is paid, consideration must be paid, then only that is supply. But one exception is there, that it can be in the course of business or cannot be, means whether or not in the course of furtherance of business. Even if it is not in the course of business, if any service is imported for a consideration, if it is not in the course of furtherance of business, then also it is included in the definition of supply. Okay. Now, third point, C number they have given, supply includes activities specified in schedule 1, made or agreed to be made without consideration. Means for the activities which are specified in schedule 1, and if those activities are made or agreed to be made, and that is included in this definition of supply, even if that is made without consideration. So in point number 8, they said that consideration must be there in the course or furtherance of business must be there. But in B point, they've said that one exception is there in importation of services in the course of furtherance of business is not compulsory. And then activities for activities which are mentioned in schedule 1, for those activities consideration is not important. Okay, so supply includes A, B, C. Now 1A, what they have given, where certain activities or transaction constitute a supply in accordance with the provisions of subsection 1, they shall be treated either as supply of goods or supply of services referred to in schedule 2. Now if any activity is termed as supply, then it will be either supply of good or service. Okay, it can't be both. It should be something, na? It should be either it should be supply of goods or it should be supply of services. Now, whether it should be supply of goods or supply of services, that is mentioned in Schedule 2. In Schedule 2, various items are there and they have specified this is supply of goods, this is supply of services. Okay. Now, then in 2, they have given subsection 1 we have done, subsection 1A we have done, now subsection 2. Notwithstanding anything contained in subsection 1, means without overruling what is mentioned in subsection 1, activities or transactions specified in schedule 3 or such activities or transactions undertaken by CG, SG or any local authority in which they are engaged as public authorities as may be notified by the government on the recommendation of the council. These activities which are mentioned in schedule 3 and the activities by the government, local authority, these activities shall be treated neither as supply of goods nor supply of services. Now subsection 3, subject to subsections 1, 1A and 2. Subject to these subsections, the government may on the recommendation of the council specify by notification. What will it will specify by notification? Specify by notification the transactions that are to be treated as supply of goods and not a supply of services, or supply of services and not a supply of goods, means with subject to the sections which we have studied earlier, means these all subsections 1, 1A, 2. The government through notification will specify that these transactions are supply of goods and not supply of services, these are supply of services and these are not supply of goods. Okay, now meaning and scope of supply is clear, I guess. Now section 7 is done. Now analysis. The definition of supply as contained in section 7 of CGST Act is an inclusive definition and does not define the term exhaustively. I said earlier it's an inclusive definition, it's not an exhaustive definition. It defines the scope of supply in an inclusive manner. Clause A of subsection 1 illustrates the forms of supply, but the list is not exhaustive. This is substantiated by the use of words such as in the definition. They have given us such as. See. All forms of supply of goods or services, both such as sale. So that's why. Now provisions of scope of supply under CGST Act have also been made applicable to IGST Act via section 20 of IGST Act. So the scope of supply, the provisions of scope of supply that is given under the CGST Act that we have studied just now, that has also been made applicable to the IGST Act. Okay, same scope of supply, same provisions of the scope of supply via section 80, means section 20 of IGST Act. Now meaning and scope of supply in terms of section 7 can be understood in the terms of following parameters. Now following parameters are there with the help of which we'll understand this meaning and scope of supply more clearly. The first one, they have given supply should be of goods or services. Supply of anything other than goods or services like money, security, etc. does not attract GST. Supply should be of goods or services only. And the one which excluded from the definition of goods or services, that is money, securities. So if the supply of money, securities is made, then that doesn't attract GST. So it should be of goods or services. Second one is supply should be made for a consideration. Consideration must be there. Third parameter is that supply should be made for in the course of furtherance of business. 3 parameters. First one is that the supply should be of goods or services. Money, securities doesn't attract GST. Then supply should be made for a consideration. Third one is supply should be made in the course of furtherance of business. Now these 3 parameters we'll discuss in detail. Aforesaid parameters describe the concept of supply. However, there are a few exceptions to the second and third parameters. Second, third parameters, this consideration one in the course of furtherance of business, there are certain exceptions in these two parameters. The requirement of supply being made for a consideration in the course of furtherance of business in the GST law. Few exceptions have been carved out where the transaction is deemed to be supply even without consideration. Now, as they have said that consideration is the important that parameter, in all three parameters they have mentioned that consideration must be there, but exception is what? Exception to this parameter is activities mentioned in schedule 1. So they have given few exceptions have been carved out where a transaction is deemed to be a supply even without consideration, and that is contained in schedule 1 of CGST Act discussed later in this chapter. Similarly, the condition of supply is then one more condition of supply is that it should be made in the course of furtherance of business. That has been relaxed in case of import of services. Now, exception to this condition is import of services. We have done in meaning of supply just now. Now, import of service for a consideration whether or not in the course of furtherance of business treated as supply. So, three conditions are there. Consideration must be there, in the course of furtherance of business must be there, and it should be of goods or services. So, exception to the condition, consideration condition exception is the activities mentioned in schedule 1, and the exception to the condition of in the course of business is import of services. Now further, there are also cases where transaction is kept out of the scope of supply despite the existence of the above parameters. Now what happens if any activity has all these three parameters, means consideration is there in the course of supply, in the course of business it is made in the course of business, and it is of goods or services, it is the supply, it is the supply of goods or services. Suppose if any activity in any supply all these three conditions are present, then also it is kept out of the scope of supply. That is, there is a list of activities which are treated neither as supply of goods nor as supply of services, the activities which are mentioned in schedule 3. So despite of having all these three conditions, despite of having all the parameters of supply, that is out of the scope of supply, means the list which is mentioned in schedule 3, they are talking about those list. So in other words, they are outside the scope of GST. Okay. Now GST law has classified certain activities or transaction either as supply of goods or as supply of services. Government is also empowered to notify transactions that are to be treated as supply of goods and not as supply of services, or as supply of services and not as supply of goods. In schedule 2 will find the list of the activities which are either supply of goods or supply of services. Okay, government is also notified by way of by a notification on official gazette. In the subsequent paras, the above aspects of supply have been extensively discussed. The discussion has been broadly categorized into following. Now see, supply includes this, excludes this. Now supply includes this three. Supply for consideration the course of furtherance of business. Supply includes importation of services for a consideration whether or not in course of furtherance of business, and supply without consideration. Means the one which we have studied in section 7, they have given in summarized form. Import of service point, we have already done the supply in the course of business, then importation of service, and then supply without consideration. So supply includes all these three items, then excludes, supply excludes negative list, means the one which are mentioned in schedule 3 and section 7 subsection 2, means the government supply made by government. See, section 2, schedule 3 or such activities transaction by the government. So supply excludes negative list, that is section 7 subsection 2 plus schedule 3. Now supply activities to be treated supply of goods or supply of services, that is mentioned in section 7(1)(a), that is plus schedule 2. When in 7(1)(a) only it is given that the activities are mentioned in schedule 2. See, in 7(1)(a) only they have given that these are all activities which constitute supply of goods or supply of service. Any activity which is treated as goods or service, that is mentioned in schedule 2. So that's why they have given the reference of section also over here, section 7 subsection 1(a) plus schedule 2. So this summary, they have given section 7, entire section 7 in this entire meaning and scope of supply in summary form, in this chart form. So now let's do the parameters, okay, one by one. First parameter is supply should be of goods or services. Supply for consideration in the course of furtherance of business. This parameter we are discussing. Now they have given supply should be of goods or services or both. The definition of supply begins with the term supply includes, thus making it clear that CGST Act intends to give an extensive meaning to the term supply. Supply includes all forms of supply of goods or services or both. Supply of anything other than goods or services does not attract GST. Means money and securities does not attract GST. The term goods and services as defined under the Act has been analyzed by way of a diagram on the next page. Anything supplied other than goods and services is outside the scope of supply. The first part of Section 7, Clause A of Section 7, Subsection 1, includes all forms of supply of goods or services, both such as sale, transfer, barter, exchange, license, rental, lease, or disposal, made or agreed to be made for a consideration in the course of furtherance of business. Again, they have repeated the definition. Now, what they have given again, supply includes sale, barter, these all, and it should be for consideration, and it should be in the course of furtherance of business. Thus, the form of supply as contemplated in this first part have two prerequisites. So we can say there are two prerequisites for supply, that it should be for consideration and it should be in the course of furtherance of business. Clear? Now again, what they have given, goods means every kind of movable property, services means everything other than goods, and both the definition of goods and services excludes money and securities. Now, goods includes actionable claim, growing crops, grass and things attached to or forming part of the land which agreed to be severed or cut off before supply or under contract of supply. And the service includes activities relating to use of money or conversion of money by cash by any other mode from one form currency denomination to another form for which a separate consideration is charged. So, this entire goods and service definition they have given in chart form. Now, the first part of Section 7, Clause A of Subsection 1 includes all forms of supply of goods such as this, sale, transfer, barter, lease, disposal, rental, made or agreed to be made for a consideration in the course of furtherance of business. So, again they have given in chart form, supply includes all forms of supply, this for consideration in the course of furtherance of business. Thus, the form of supply as contemplated in the first part have two prerequisites. Supply should be made for consideration and supply should be in the course of furtherance of business. We shall now discuss the various source of supply as illustrated in 7.1a in detail. So the three parameters was, let's recap once. These are the three parameters. That it should be in the course of furtherance of business, it should be for consideration, supply should be of goods and services. Goods or services. So these are the three parameters of supply. We have already discussed first parameter in detail. Supply should be of goods or services or both. This entire parameter we have studied. It was very simple, that it should be of goods or services. That's why they have defined goods or services properly in chart form. So it should be of goods or services. Now second parameter. So before discussing the second parameter, they have discussed this in detail. They have discussed the sale, transfer, barter, these all terms they have discussed in detail. Then they have discussed the other two parameters. Then they have discussed that supplies should be for consideration, that parameter, and then they have discussed the third parameter, that is supply should be in the course of furtherance of business. Okay, so just now we have completed the first parameter. I hope there is no confusion at all. See, first parameter is beginning from here. Supply should be of goods or services or both. This we have read. There is nothing much difficult. So this first parameter is ending over here. Now in first parameter only they are discussing about this term sale, transfer, all. So first parameter is continuing only. So supply includes all forms of supply. Various forms of supply contemplated in section 7.1a are sale, transfer, barter, exchange, license, rental, lease or disposal. These forms of supply are only illustrative and not exhaustive. However, none of these terms have been defined under the Act. In order to understand their meaning, we have taken recourse to the dictionary meaning or otherwise have explained them as follows. So these all terms are not defined under the Act, they have taken the dictionary meaning. Now sale and transfer. The dictionary meaning of term sale is the act of selling, specifically the transfer of ownership of and title to the property from one person to another for a price. Dictionary meaning is what? When the sale means transfer of ownership, transfer of title to the property, that is sale. and transfer is made for a price. So as per Sale of Goods Act 1930, a contract of sale of goods is a contract whereby seller transfers or agrees to transfer the property in goods further to the buyer for a price. The simple meaning is this, and the one which is defined in the Sale of Goods Act is that when the seller transfers or agrees to transfer the property in goods to the buyer for a price, that is sale. Now further, the term transfer has been defined in Blacklaw's dictionary as to convey or remove from one place, person, etc. to another. When it is removed from one place to another, and pass or hand over from one person from one to another, passing over from one person to another, handing over from one person to another is transfer, specifically to make over the possession or control of. So simple definition: sale means selling of goods for a price, and transfer means to convey, remove from one place to another. Now example what they have given: a shopkeeper sells a pen for rupees 100 to the buyer. After the sale, the pen belongs to the buyer and shopkeeper does not have any right on the pen. Simple thing, this is a transaction of sale. Yeah, okay. If you purchase any pen from the market, then it no longer belongs to the seller. If you have purchased it, if you have given the money, and if you have purchased from the shop, then it no longer belongs to the shopkeeper. The pen belongs to you. So this is a transaction of sale. Now a company transfers goods from its factory to the depot for the sale purposes. So this is transfer of goods where the sale has not taken place. Sale has not taken place, just goods are transferred from factory to depot. So this is transfer of goods. Understood sale and transfer. Now barter and exchange. The dictionary meaning of the term barter is to exchange goods or services for other goods or services. Instead of using money, means goods are exchanged for goods. There is no money element. Money is not involved in this. Okay, one good is exchanged for other goods. Now Blacklaw's dictionary defines the term exchange as an act of giving or taking one thing for another, while barter deals with a transaction which only includes an exchange of goods or services. Exchange may cover a situation where the goods are paid for partly in goods and partly in money. Where there is barter of goods or services, same activity constitutes supply as well as consideration. Yes. So, while barter deals with transaction which only includes an exchange of goods or services, exchange may cover a situation where the goods are paid for partly in goods and partly in money. Okay, in exchange, the situation may come that situation where part consideration is paid in money and part consideration is paid by way of good. That means that situation is covered in exchange, but that is not the case of barter. In barter, goods or services are exchanged. Means there is no money element. Means when there is a barter of goods or services, same activity constitutes supply as well as consideration. Let's understand this more clearly with the help of example. See example number 3. When a new car worth 5 lakh is purchased in exchange of an old car along with monetary consideration of 4 lakh paid for the said purchase. Means a new car is purchased of 5 lakh, and in exchange what is given? 4 lakh. This 4 lakh rupees is given plus old car is given. Okay, suppose a car value of old car is 1 lakh, so 1 lakh is not paid in monetary terms. Old car is given and 4 lakh is given, and new car was purchased. So in this case, money in this partly payment is made partly in goods and partly in money. So this is the situation of exchange. This is not barter. Okay, so they have given in Blacklaw's dictionary defines the term exchange. So barter is slightly different from exchange. We can't say barter as an exchange. Okay, see the first line. That's why they have written the dictionary meaning of the term barter is to exchange goods or services for other goods instead of using money. Instead of using money, they are using goods or services. Now understand this barter with the help of example number 4. A doctor got his hair cut from a barber and provides him medical consultancy in return. In this transaction, doctor provided the medical consultancy services to the barber, for which consideration was in the form of hair cutting services provided by the barber. Means barber provided the hair cutting services, and in exchange, doctor provided medical consultancy services. There is no money element. Similarly, the barber provided hair cutting services to the doctor, for which consideration was in the form of medical consultancy services provided by the doctor. So above transaction should be treated as barter transaction, both from the point of view of doctor as well as barber. Okay. Next term, license, lease, rental and disposal. The dictionary meaning of the term license is permission granted by the competent authority to engage in a business or occupation or an activity otherwise unlawful. Means Blacklaw's dictionary defines disposal as sale, pledge, giving away, use, consumption or any other disposition of a thing. So dictionary meaning is that the permission granted by the competent authority to engage in any lawful business, to engage in any lawful occupation. That is license. Now Blacklaw's dictionary defined disposal as disposal means sale of goods, sale of anything, sale, pledge, giving away, use, consumption, any other disposition of anything, that is disposal. Okay. Now dictionary meaning of rental. Rental means arrangement to rent something or amount of money that you pay to rent something, and that of rent means the arrangement that is to rent something or amount of money that you pay to rent something. And lease means to make legal arrangements by which money is paid in order to use the land. If you are using someone's land, the money which you pay for using that land, that is lease. So, and that you pay under legal agreement. Building a vehicle for use of land, a building, a vehicle or a piece of equipment for an agreed period of time. Now under GST regime, such licenses, leases and rentals of goods with or without transfer of right to use are covered under the supply of service. Means transfer of right can be, means right can be transferred or right cannot be transferred. With or without transfer of right, these are covered in the supply of service, because there is no transfer of title in such supplies. If there is transfer of title, then we can say that it's supply of goods, but there is no transfer of title in such cases. In lease, licenses, rentals, in this case there is no transfer of title, there is just transfer of right. Transfer of right may or may not be there. There is no transfer of title, that's why they are covered under the scope supply of service. Such transactions are specifically treated as supply of service in Schedule 2 of CGST Act. As discussed earlier, one of the parameters to qualify a supply of goods and services is that supply is made for a consideration. This parameter has been explicated in the following paras, means explain the following paras. So we have already discussed first parameter, that is supply should be of goods or services, and with that we have also discussed the various terms, lease, license, these all. So first parameter is over. Now second parameter, supply should be for consideration. Now the dictionary meaning of the word consideration is payment. Consideration need not always be in the form of money. It can be in money or in kind. It can be in money or in kind. It covers anything which might be possible done, given or made in exchange for something else. Further, consideration did not always flow from recipient of supply. It can also be made by a third person. They have defined consideration. What is consideration? Consideration is a payment. When a supply is made, suppose by Mr. A to Mr. B, then the amount which is paid by Mr. B, that is consideration, and it can be paid by Mr. B also, or it can be made by third person also. Means it can be made by Mr. C also on behalf of B. So that is recipient can be third person also. Now consideration will not always be in the form of money. It can be in any form. It is not necessary, because in definition of consideration only it was given whether or not in money. So it did not always be in the form of money. It can be money or any kind. It covers anything which might be possibly done, given or made in exchange for something else. So it can be in any form. However, any subsidy given by central government or state government is not considered as consideration. Suppose any subsidy is given by the central or state government in respect of that supply, that subsidy amount is not included in consideration. A deposit given in respect of the supply of goods or services or both shall not be considered as payment made for such supply unless the supplier applies such deposit as consideration for the said supply. This also we have discussed. Means any security deposit that is received by the supplier, that will not be included in this consideration unless the supplier applies such consideration for the said payment. Okay, for the said supply, it's all same. The term consideration is defined under section 231 of CGST Act. The said definition has been depicted in the form of a diagram on the next page. Let us examine the existence of consideration the following two scenarios. They have given the two scenarios. We have to examine these two scenarios. See, first scenario, they have given donation received by charitable institutions from individual donors without quid pro quo. Quid pro quo means something for something, without something for something. So if donation is received by charitable institution from individual donors, what is the scenario? See, first see the consideration they have explained. Consideration, payment in money or otherwise for supply. Okay. Then second arrow is monetary value of any act of forbearance for the supply. Monetary value of for any act of forbearance for the supply that we have done, means for forbearance means tolerance and any consideration that is received for doing something or promise to refrain from doing something that is covered in this, that is subjected to GST. So consideration means these two terms. Now this two is by the recipient or any other person. Now see the, come to left side. Payment in money or otherwise for the supply. Deposit to be considered as payment, that will be considered only when the supplier applies as deposit as consideration for the said supply. Now by the recipient or any other person, see the down arrow, it excludes subsidy given by the central or state government. So central and state government, central or state government. So this entire consideration definition they have described in chart form, they have shown in chart form. Now first scenario, donation is received by charitable institution from individual donors without quid pro quo, without something for something. So an important feature for consideration is quid pro quo, something for something. Consideration means what, something. If any supply is made, then only consideration will be there. Without supply, there is no consideration. How? And without consideration, there is no supply. So donation received by charitable institutions are treated as consideration only if they exist quid pro quo. Donation received by charitable institutions are treated as consideration only if there exists quid pro quo, that is, there is an obligation on part of the recipient of the donation or gift to do anything, that is, supply of service. Okay, if donation is received by the charitable institution of the individual donor and the charitable institution is the recipient in this case, not recipient, it's just, we can say donation is received by charitable institution. So as per the general example, we can say the one who pays the money is the recipient and the one who receives the money is the supplier. He's bound to supply something. So one who is receiving the consideration in this example is the charitable institution, and so charitable institution has an obligation on the part of the recipient to do anything, means to supply a service. Then only it will be treated as consideration, then only this donation will be treated as consideration. Now generally institutions such as religious institutions, charitable institutions, schools, hospitals, orphanages, old age homes, etc. receive financial help or any other support in the form of donation or gift from the individual donors. In order to express their gratitude towards such help or support, the recipient, what they do, the recipient institutions place a nameplate or similar such acknowledgement in their premises. They place a nameplate of that person, that this person has donated this much amount. So this to just to express their gratitude towards that help. So when the name of the donor is displayed in recipient's institution premises in such a manner which can be said to be an expression of gratitude and public recognition of donor's act of philanthropy and is not aimed at giving publicity to the donor in such manner that it would be an advertising or promotion of his business, then it can be said that there is no supply or service for a consideration in the form of donation. In other words, there is no obligation on part of the recipient of donation or gift to do anything, therefore there is no GST liability on such consideration. Now suppose as in just to express a gratitude, if the nameplate of that person is placed in the that institute that premises of that institution, means in that charitable institution, if that nameplate is placed, so just to, that is not the motto of displaying that name, displaying that donor's name is not to giving not to give publicity, is not to advertise his business. The motto is just expression of gratitude. So that is that, then there is no publicity, there is no publicity of donor's business, we can say, then it would be a, then it will not be called as supply because there is no advertising or promotion of his business. The motto is just expression of gratitude, so it can be called as supply. So it is outside the purview of supply. So no supply, that means no GST liability. Okay, nameplate is just given, just placed, just for just to express a gratitude, not to advertise or promote donor's business. So means there is no supply of service, so there is no GST liability. Now some examples of cases where there would be no taxable supplies are as follows. Now Bhushan donated a blackboard to Yoganish Sansthan, a charitable yoga institution. Yoganish Sansthan printed underneath the blackboard so donated. Now good wishes from Mr. Bhushan. This was printed on the blackboard. This was just to express their gratitude. So this we can't say it's a supply because there is no promotion or advertisement of donor's business. So there is no supply. So there is no GST liability. Second example is Srimati Durga Devi donated some money to a temple in the memory of her late father. The temple trust constructed a room in the temple complex from such donation and wrote what was written in that room on the top of that room, donated by Srimati Durga Devi in the memory of her father, on the door floor of the room. This was printed on the door floor of the room. So this is just to express gratitude. There is no advertisement, there is no promotion. So in above example, it may be noticed that there is no reference or mention of any business activity of the donor, which otherwise would have got advertised. They would have got advertised if suppose the name of business was there, if any business activity was mentioned over there. So we could have said that it is an advertising or promotion of donors business, but there is no such scenario. It's just for expression of gratitude they have done this. So there is no supply, so there is no GST. Thus GST is not leviable where the following three cumulative conditions are satisfied. Namely, if these three cumulative conditions are there, then we can say it is GST is not leviable. First one is gift or donation is made to a charitable organization. Second cumulative condition is payment has the character of gift or donation. Third is purpose is philanthropic, means that is it leads to no commercial gain and not advertisement. So again, three conditions should be satisfied cumulatively. What are the three conditions that needs to be satisfied cumulatively for non-leviability of GST? First is that gift or donation is made to charitable institution. Payment has a character of gift or donation. Third is purpose is philanthropic. If three conditions are satisfied cumulatively, then there is no GST liability. So in this first scenario which we studied just now, in this all the three conditions was there. Means gift was made, payment was has the character of gift, and purpose philanthropic. That's why all these three conditions were satisfied cumulatively in the first scenario. So there is no GST liability. The second scenario is artwork sent by artists to galleries for exhibition is not a supply as no consideration flows from gallery to the artist. If any artwork is sent to the gallery by the artist just for exhibition, that is not supply. When actual supply takes place, if the same is purchased from the gallery by the buyer, then we can say that there is supply. If just exhibition is if just in galleries those paintings are displayed just for exhibition, so that is not supply. If they are actually purchased from the gallery by the buyer, then we can say they supply. See, artists give their work of art to galleries where it is exhibited for supply. However, no consideration flows from the gallery to the artist where their artworks are sent to the gallery for exhibition, and therefore the same is not supply. It is only when the buyer selects a particular artwork displayed at the gallery that the actual supply takes place, and applicable GST would be payable at the time of such supply. Clear? Any transaction involving supply of goods and or services without consideration is not a supply unless it is deemed to be supply under law. So any transaction in if suppose in this and that if in any transaction there is no consideration, then that is not supply. Exception is deemed supply case. Deemed supply case means Schedule 1 activities. Now provisions Schedule 1 of CGST Act have been discussed in detail later in this chapter. Okay. Now we have already discussed first parameter. Now second parameter ending line. Another parameter to qualify supply of goods and services that supply is made in the course of furtherance of business. No, this is the continuation of the third parameter. Sorry, this parameter has explained the following paras. So we have already discussed two parameters. First, again, 2 or 3 parameters was 3 parameters for scope of supply. First one is that supply should be for goods or services. Second one is there should be consideration. Third one is in the course of furtherance of supply, in the course of furtherance of business. So first parameter we have already discussed, supply should be of goods or services. Second parameter, supply should be of consideration, that also we have discussed. Third parameter, third is supply should be in the course of furtherance of business. Yeah, the two scenarios which we discussed, it was given two scenarios. First one was donation received by charitable institution, so there is no GST liability as there is no supply. And the second scenario, artwork sent by artists to galleries for exhibition. Artwork sent by artists to galleries, So there is no supply, so there is no GST liability. So in all these two scenarios, there is no GST liability, as there is no supply. So consideration is there, but there is no supply, so no GST liability. Now, last parameter, third parameter, supply should be in the course of furtherance of business. GST is essentially a tax only on commercial transactions. GST is essentially a tax only on commercial transactions. Hence, only those supplies that are in the course of furtherance of business qualify as supply under GST. Resultantly, any supplies made by an individual in his personal capacity do not come under the ambit of GST unless they fall within the definition of business. So, it means any activity which is made in the any supply that is made in the course of business, that is only on those activities GST will be levied. So any activity done by the individual in his personal capacity, it's outside the purview of GST unless they fall in the definition of business. This line will understand properly with the help of example. Now, meaning of supply made in the course of furtherance of business. Any activity undertaken in the course or furtherance of business would constitute a supply. Okay. In order to understand the term in the course of furtherance, we need to first understand the term business. Business is defined under section 2 subsection 17 of the CGST Act. Inter alia includes any trade, commerce, manufacture, profession, vocation, etc., whether or not undertaken for a monetary benefit, pecuniary benefit, monetary benefit. So now definition of business we have already done before. So again they have given in chart form, in simplified form. So definition of business has been summarized in the diagram below. See the diagram. Business includes any trade, commerce, manufacture, profession, etc., even if there is no monetary benefit, and any activity incidental or ancillary to these activities, to any trade, commerce, or any activity of same nature, even if there is no volume continuity. Means any activity of same nature, means any activity of trade, manufacture, profession, etc. If those activities have no volume, continuity, regularity, then also that is included in the definition of business. Now next one is business includes supply of goods or acquisition of goods, including capital goods and services, and the supply is made in connection with commencement or closure of business. Then third one is business includes provision of facilities by club associations. If supply is made by club association to its members for consideration, that is included in business. Then if business includes admission for consideration to any premises, if admission of any person is made to any premises, and for that admission if consideration is paid, then that is included in business. Then service as holder of office accepted in the course of furtherance of trade or profession, means if any service is provided by the holder of office and that service is in the course of furtherance of business, then that is included in service business definition. Then activities of a race club, that is included, including by way of totalizator or a license to bookmaker, or activities of a licensed bookmaker in such club, that is included. Now any activity by the government, local authorities as public authorities, that is included in the definition of business. Thus, business includes any activity, transaction which is incidental or ancillary to any trade, commerce, manufacture, profession, vocation, adventure, wager, that is bet, or any other similar activity. In addition, any activity undertaken by the central government or state government or any local authorities in which they are engaged as public authorities shall be considered as business. Okay. For any trade, commerce, or any other similar activity to qualify as business, frequency, volume, continuity, or regularity of such transactions is not a prerequisite. Why they have given it not a prerequisite? Because in the definition only they have given that any activity of same nature, means any activity of trade, commerce nature, even if there is no volume, continuity, regularity, then also it is included in the definition of business. That's why they have said that frequency, volume, continuity, regularity of such transaction is not a prerequisite. Even if there is no volume, there is no continuity, there is no frequency, there is no regularity, then also that activity is included in the definition of business. Clear? Now let us read some examples of supply made or not made in the course of others of business. First one is Rishabh buys a car for his personal use and after a year sells it to a car dealer. Sale of car by Rishabh to car dealer is not a supply under CGST Act because said supply is not made by Rishabh in the course of furtherance of business. Okay, it's done in the personal capacity. That was car was for personal use, and after using it for a year, it was sold. Rishabh sold that car to a car dealer. So the supply was not made by Rishabh in the course of business. Next one, Manikarnika sold her old gold bangles and earrings to Abhushan jewelers. Sale of old gold jewelry by an individual to a jeweler will not constitute supply, as the same cannot be said to be in the course of furtherance of business of the individual. This is not in the course of business, so no, it will not be considered as supply. Will not constitute supply, the same cannot be said to be in the course of furtherance of business. Cannot be it is not supply as it is not in the course of furtherance of business. The view taken in the above two examples is based on the view taken in the departmental FAQs or press release. Means the view that is taken in the above two examples, that view was taken in the press release, that reference only they have given. Now next, since business includes vocation, therefore sale of goods or services as a vocation is also supply of goods as a supply under GST. Now earlier only they have mentioned that if any activity doesn't satisfy the conditions of supply, three conditions of supply are there. Supply should be of goods or services, it should be for consideration, and it should be in the course of furtherance of business. If any activity, if any supply, if any activity say doesn't satisfy any of the three conditions, but it satisfies the definition of business, then it will be termed as supply. See the line what was given over here. I'm reading that again. See, resultantly, any supplies made by individual in his personal capacity do not come under the ambit of GST. Okay, any supply that is made by individual personal capacity and in personal capacity, that is not under the ambit of GST unless they fall within the definition of business. If they fall in the definition of business, then they will be covered under the ambit of GST. Now see this example, vocation 1. Vocation is covered in the definition of business. See the example based on this. Sundaram Acharya, famous actor, paints some paintings and sells them. The consideration from the sale is to be donated to a charitable trust, Kind Human. The sale of paintings by the actor qualifies as supply. Now in this we can clearly see that it is not in the course of business. In the course of furtherance of business is not there. So this condition is this condition of supply. This condition of supply is missing over here. But we can see that the definition it is covered. This is the case of vocation. Sundaram Acharya is a famous actor. So this means the supply is made as a vocation. He paints paintings. He paints paintings and sells them. So this we can say this is the case of sale of goods or services as a vocation. So though condition of supply is not satisfied over here, but the supply is as a vocation. The sale of goods or services is as a vocation. So definition of service is satisfied, definition of business is satisfied over here. So it will automatically be called as supply. So sale of paintings by the actor qualifies as supply. Okay, even though condition of supply is not satisfied over here, but it is covered in the definition of business. That's why it is termed as supply. Now second example is service provided by club or association to its member for consideration as a supply. Now a resident welfare association, based on this line only, this example is based. Example number 10. A resident welfare association provides service of depositing electricity bills of the residents in lieu of some nominal charges. Provision of service by a club or association or society to its members is treated as supply, as this is included in the definition of business. This is specifically included in the definition of business when a club provides any service to the residents in lieu of some nominal charges, that is included in the definition of business. So this is termed as supply. Next one, admission of person to any premises for a consideration is also called as business. See, in example number 10 also condition of supply was not satisfied, means that this was specifically covered in a business definition, so automatically it is treated as supply. Now admission of person to any premises for a consideration, that is also included in the definition of business, so it will be treated as supply. See what they have written, services by way of admission to circus, cinema halls, amusement parks including theme parks, water parks, etc. are considered as supply, as these are services by way of admission of persons to any premises for a consideration. Okay, the services which are supplied by way of admission to circus, cinemas, etc., that are considered supply, as these are services by way of admission of persons to any premises for consideration, means persons are admitted to any premises and for which consideration is charged from those persons. So these are specifically included in the definition of business. So these all admission to these all places, these all premises are termed as supply. Clarified by CBIC White press release dated this 13/7/2017 GST flyer, the meaning and scope of supply. They have just said that this meaning and scope of supply was clarified by the press release. Now there is another school of thought according to which, since the definition of business includes trade, commerce, or any other similar activity, whether or not there is frequency, volume, continuity, or regularity of such transaction, the transaction in the above examples can be considered to be made in the course of furtherance of business and thus will constitute supply. The taxability of such transaction, however, will have to be examined under the provision of Section 9. This view is based on literal interpretation of law. However, since this view may not always lead to logical conclusions, it is more prudent to take a purposive approach as followed in departmental FAQs press release given above. So they have just said that the examples which we have done just now, they have said that we can take this as we can consider that it is made in the course of business, but that will not be the logical interpretation of law. Means this view will be based on the literal interpretation. View may not always lead to logical interpretation. So they have just mentioned that it is more obvious, it is more prudent to take the purposive approach that is followed in the FAQs in the press release. So you can ignore this thing. Means you just have to remember, if three conditions are satisfied of supply, then that is supply. If even if conditions are not satisfied, it is covered in the definition of business, then that is supply. Simple. Now business includes activities of race club, including by way of totalizator or a license to bookmaker, or activities of licensed bookmaker in such club. So based on this example is based on this line. Royal Turf Race Club is engaged in facilitating the wagering, means betting transactions on horses played through totalizator. For providing the services of facilitating wagering transactions, Royal Turf Race Club gets commission. This club is engaged in betting transactions. So for this transaction, for facilitating the transactions, they get commission, which is deducted and retained by the club from the total bet value. Such services amount to supply as the activity of race club are included in the definition of business. It is included in business definition. So this activity of facilitating betting transactions for which consideration is charged, means commission is charged, this is included in the definition of business. So the said service amounts to supply. Now there is one exception to this course or furtherance of business rule, that is import of service for a consideration. We have already discussed earlier. From the above discussion, it can be inferred that if an activity or transaction satisfied all the above parameters as discussed in point A, B and C above, said activity or transaction qualify as supply under GST. All the three parameters, the supply should be of goods or services, supply should be made for consideration, and it should be in the course of furtherance of business. If an activity or transaction satisfies all these three parameters, then said activity or transaction qualifies as supply under GST. Okay, and if it is specifically covered in the definition of business, then also it is supply. Even if conditions are not satisfied, but it is specifically covered in the definition of business, then that is also supply. So after understanding the basic concept of supply, let us now examine the taxability of few transactions. So now we'll study about taxability of cost petroleum. So from taxability of cost petroleum onwards, we'll do in second part. Means I've divided this entire chapter, this detailed discussion of this chapter, in two parts. So first part is ending over here, and second part you will get in my another video. So this completes our first half of this chapter. So hope you all have understood this. If you have any query, then do let me know in the comment section. If you have liked my video, then please do like, share and subscribe. Thank you. Happy studying. Bye bye. Take care.